Koschei the Deathless ruled as one of Slavic folklore's most feared villains for one simple reason. Nothing could kill him. Not a sword, not poison, not fire, not a single curse cast by any sorcerer bold enough to try. Long before the story most often told about him begins, Koschei had already done something almost no other figure in mythology attempts. He removed his own death from his body entirely and hid it somewhere no enemy could ever hope to find it. At the tip of a needle, sealed inside an egg, inside a duck, inside a hare, locked inside an iron chest, buried beneath an ancient oak tree on a distant, hard-to-reach island called Buyan. For as long as that needle stayed hidden, Koschei was functionally immortal, free to terrorize kingdoms, kidnap whoever he wanted, and shrug off every attempt to stop him. He might have stayed that way forever if a captured warrior queen hadn't warned a prince not to open one single door in her fortress, and if the prince, out of nothing more than ordinary human curiosity, hadn't opened it anyway. This is the story of Marya Morevna, Prince Ivan, and the villain who thought he'd made himself impossible to kill. In the tale most widely recorded across Slavic oral tradition, Prince Ivan marries Marya Morevna, a warrior queen who leads her own army and has personally defeated hostile forces on the battlefield, more capable in combat, by every measure the story gives her, than Ivan himself. Before riding out to lead a campaign, Marya Morevna hands Ivan the keys to her fortress and gives him exactly one instruction. He may go anywhere in the castle he likes, open any door he finds, except for one locked room at the end of a particular corridor. That room, she tells him plainly, he must never open. Ivan holds out for a long time. But curiosity in these stories always wins eventually, and one day, alone in the fortress with nothing to occupy him, he unlocks the forbidden door. Inside, chained to the wall, emaciated and clearly starved for a very long time, hangs Koschei the Deathless, imprisoned there by Marya Morevna herself after some earlier unrecorded victory over him. Koschei begs Ivan for water, pleading that he's dying of thirst, that a single cup couldn't possibly cause any harm. Ivan, moved by pity for what looks like a suffering, powerless prisoner, brings him water. He has no way of knowing that a single cup is exactly what Koschei has been waiting years to receive. The first cup of water restores some of Koschei's strength, and he immediately asks for a second, insisting the first barely helped at all. Ivan, still unaware of who he's actually looking at, brings him another. Then, weaker sounding still, Koschei asks for a third. By the third cup, Koschei's chains, weakened by his restored strength, finally give way. He breaks free of the wall entirely, and instead of attacking Ivan or fleeing the fortress quietly, he does the one thing designed to inflict maximum damage on the prince who'd just unknowingly freed him. He flies straight toward Marya Morevna's army, finds her on the field, and abducts her in front of her own soldiers, carrying her back to his own kingdom before Ivan can do anything to stop him. Ivan set out after her immediately, and the journey introduced him to a pattern the rest of the story depends on entirely. Along the road, he encountered a starving eagle, a dying fish stranded out of water, and a nearly caught bee, and in each case, rather than help himself to an easy meal or ignore the creature entirely, he chose to spare it and help it survive instead. Each animal, in turn, promised to repay him if he ever needed it. When Ivan finally reached Koschei's kingdom and found Marya Morevna, she warned him immediately. Koschei's horse could outrun anything, and there was no way to simply grab her and flee. Marya Morevna and Ivan tried to escape together 3 separate times, and each time, Koschei's supernatural horse caught up with them with ease, letting Koschei recapture his prisoner and, on the final attempt, nearly kill Ivan outright, before deciding, almost as an insult, to let him live and try again if he was foolish enough to. On his next visit, Marya Morevna helped Ivan ask Koschei directly where his horse had come from, learning that it had been given to him by a witch, Baba Yaga, who lived across a river of fire that no ordinary rider could cross. Ivan set out to find Baba Yaga himself, using the same spared creatures from earlier in his journey to survive her tests, and eventually claimed a magical horse of his own, one finally capable of outrunning Koschei's. This time, when Ivan and Marya Morevna fled together, Koschei's horse couldn't close the distance fast enough, and in the pursuit, Koschei himself fell and was gravely wounded. But wounding him wasn't enough. Koschei, true to the death he'd hidden away centuries earlier, simply got back up. The only way to end him permanently was to find the needle, the egg inside the duck, inside the hare, inside the iron chest, buried under the oak tree on the distant island of Buyan. And it was the animals Ivan had spared along the way, the eagle, the fish, the bee, who returned exactly when promised, tracking down each nested layer in turn until the needle itself was finally fully exposed. Ivan broke it. Only then, for the first time in longer than anyone could say, did Koschei the Deathless actually die. With Koschei's death finally real and permanent, his entire fortress and the power he'd held over it collapsed with him, and Ivan and Marya Morevna were free to return home together without a supernatural horse or an unkillable sorcerer capable of dragging either of them back. Koschei the Deathless went on to become one of the most enduring villain figures in all of Slavic folklore, appearing across dozens of regional tales beyond Marya Morevna's story, almost always defined by the same core trait. A villain whose greatest strength, a death hidden completely outside his own body, was also his single point of total vulnerability, provided anyone patient and clever enough ever managed to find it. The specific chain of hiding places, needle in egg, in duck, in hare, in chest, in ground, became one of the most recognizable structures in folklore worldwide, echoed in later stories far beyond Slavic tradition, wherever a villain's power depends on a secret so well hidden that finding it becomes its own entire quest. What makes the story endure isn't really the needle itself. It's the shape of the whole plot underneath it. A prince who survives an entire ordeal not through strength, which Marya Morevna already had more of than he did, but through small, repeated acts of mercy toward creatures who had nothing to offer him in the moment, and everything to offer him later. Koschei hid his death as carefully as anything can be hidden. It still wasn't enough. Subscribe if you want more. See you in the next one.